Tonight we're going to discuss the Passover Haggadah, something that has become somewhat of a bore for most, traditional for others, and by and large, the purpose of such an extensive reading that one must go through if he wants to, quote, recite the Haggadah, seems to really have disappeared from, let's say, the mainstream of Judaism. I guess there are some diehards, let's say the Orthodox, that still would rush through it as quickly as they possibly can. And but for the most part, others simply feel that either it should be omitted, or possibly some of it, maybe the songs that are included in the Haggadah, should be considered, because after all, this is a family holiday. Even that originated somewhat, not from a Kabbalistic point of view, not that a family reunion should not be observed maybe once a week or maybe every day, but why a family reunion should be stressed on, let's say, one night of the year is beyond me. Consequently, from all that has been said, and there are tapes on Passover, but it does not include the actual Haggadah. The Kabbalah connection also is a primer which I strongly urge every one of you to review again, because it sets the tone for much of what we're going to be discussing this evening in relation to the Haggadah of Pesach. This book, called the Haggadah, has many stages and principally relates, let us say, to the matzah and the four kosot, or the 4 cups of wine. This seems to be the essential part of the Haggadah, and of course some other aspects are thrown in, and yet I must repeat that which the Zohar considers and in relation to Passover, and that is, one must first begin to understand the significance of what Passover is all about before we can think of entertaining the mere recitation of a Haggadah. So the first step that I would like to take this evening, and that is to remove some of the misinformation and corruption that surrounds this very important holiday. After you've gone through the Kabbalah connection, you understand that we are not here to celebrate a holiday, nor are we to consider Passover a tradition that which will depend upon your affiliation within established Judaism. In other words, depending upon which faction you are related to, that will be the extent of your understanding or your participation. So I want to make one step very clear, and that is, this entire observation of Passover deals with only one aspect, and that is what it will be doing for me tonight, this night of Passover. It deals with nothing else. It deals with nothing else but my connection to this evening. Would you disconnect it after? So what is Passover? And why is it considered to be a very important holiday for Jews, and for that matter, for all peoples of the world? Because we are told, according to the Zohar and other commentaries on the Bible, that this was not an exodus merely for the Jewish people, but it was an exodus, it was freedom for all peoples. The significance of Passover and why it falls in the month of Aries, and why it also must deal with the planet Mars, is because the clue of Mars, which is the governing planet, should indicate to us immediately the importance of this holiday. Mars is the planet of war. And briefly stated, because I want to spend more time on the significance of the Haggadah rather than the background, and that is the purpose of Passover is to ensure a possibility that we are going to tap the awesome power of the cosmos, and that every war, and that war doesn't necessarily mean war between nations, but any difficulty that might arise because of environment, might arise because of people, that I shall always be victorious. I shall always be victorious. Meaning, what the purpose, the overall purpose of this night and the Haggadah is to ensure that we will create around us a security shield that no longer do we need alarm systems, which incidentally don't help that much either if he's a professional, which will also create a security shield within our own emotional dichotomies, the instability that one can find himself, yes, no, and this kind of thing, to ensure a certain extent of certainty in our life. In other words, people will put bars on the windows. It's not because they have been broken in, because tomorrow they're not sure if the thief will not touch their home. Uncertainty. And many other aspects that take up a great deal of our life throughout the year that we find necessary to ensure our safety, because there is a certain amount of uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring. So Passover deals with Mars, the planet of war, and also we understand that Moses, who happened to be there at the right time, was not simply a coincidence that he was the one who was going to take the Jews out of their bondage, but rather from a Kabbalistic point of view, we know that Moshe represents Netzach, which in English means victory. And so Moshe was going to connect our realm of the physical reality with the realm of certainty, where there is an assurance that we shall be victorious in any of situations where we might have fear of an enemy, fear of a situation. And so, as in the Exodus, the problem was not the physical release or the physical freedom of bondage of the Jew, because if you read Pashat Bishalach, if you read that particular portion of the Bible, you will see a constant reminder by the Jewish nation how good it was in Egypt, And the moment it wasn't that good in the wilderness, the first response by the Jew was, what? Why did you take us out of there? The fish was better there. So many things were going so well for them in Egypt. And they constantly complained to Moshe, why did you take us out? And if it was really that bad, if we are led to believe from childhood and maybe until tonight that the entire purpose of Passover is to remind ourselves, to remember that the Jews were once slaves, the answer is they were never slaves. In that sense of the word, they were never slaves. They enjoyed prosperity. They had whatever they wanted. And that the Bible continually stresses throughout the Torah. They had tlunot, they had complaints on Moses. Why did you take us out of Egypt? They never really understood why they should lose the corporeal, the physical realities of life that they enjoyed in Egypt. Furthermore, the stress of Passover, the Seder, the Haggadah, is when is the appropriate time for celebrating this event? In the evening. And yet we know that the Jews did not leave Egypt. Did not leave Egypt, as it is written in Parshat Bo at the end of the Parshat Bo, which is chapter 13. I believe it's chapter 13. No, I'm sorry, chapter 12, verse 51. Vahi be'etzem hayom hazeh otzi Hashem et bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al tzivotam. That the Lord took the Jews out of Egypt when? During the day, during the daytime. This exodus did not take place at night. And you would think that if things were that bad, and Pharaoh at 12 o'clock midnight, when the plague of the firstborn struck all of Egypt, and Pharaoh immediately said, leave. And if things were really that bad, don't you think they should have left immediately? Imagine a man sentenced 20 years in prison, and word comes, you can leave. What will you think he would do? Take his time, enjoy another meal in prison? No. It tells us that they sat down for a meal. Then they went around as they were told, gather up all the gold and silver.
That's what
I don't want to make any comments. About that.
Don't you be afraid of the uncertainty of what might be in the desert? That's why they wanted to stay still more. And the prisoner that's got used for 20 years, he says maybe it's better.
Maybe it's better here than the uncertainty. And certainly the wilderness wasn't the perfect place for them to. And maybe prison is, as Yonah says, maybe it is better.
I think they wanted the gold and silver.
Right? You think they wanted the gold and silver. But in any event.
Spend the gold and silver in the desert.
Yeah, well, you know, you ever see these films about Jews being driven out? Did you ever see them walk out without anything? No, they're always walking with something because tomorrow he might need it, right? So he walks out, you know. It's a characteristic of the Jew. Maybe it began with the exodus of Egypt. Maybe that was the significance. But in any event, they did not leave at night. Now, if they didn't leave at night, why are we celebrating the Exodus at night? Why are we being burdened by sitting down for hours, having to go through an Haggadah, when in essence, they left the next day? Not during the night, says the Zohar, because that is in essence what the verse says. So there seems to be many aspects to the Exodus which just doesn't seem to be realistic. And certainly if you base Judaism not on the premise of religion, if you do not base Judaism on the basis of heritage, you do not base Judaism on the basis of tradition, then what is this whole thing about? And because from a Kabbalistic point of view, those three are immediately thrown out. This is not the purpose of the Exodus. This is not the purpose why we celebrate Passover at night. Then, in essence, what is it all about? Furthermore, the matzah seems to be the leading role. He's the leading actor in this production, right? The matzah. Why the matzah? Because, again, I have to revert to a seemingly contradiction, which it says that the reason that they should eat matzah because they did not have it. There was no time for the bread to rise. You mean from 12 o'clock, let's say at night, until 9 o'clock in the morning? There wasn't enough time. How long? What are they, such experts trying to make special bread? I mean, what took so long for it to rise? There was no rush, and yet the interpretation is there was no time. They were in a rush. The answer is they were not in a rush. They were not in a rush. They could have watched the matzah rise as long as until the morning, when they then decided to leave. And there are many other seemingly contradictions. I say seemingly because according to the Kabbalistic interpretation of the Torah, there are no contradictions. But rather, everything that is contained in the story of the Exodus relates and deals with one aspect, me personally. And this observance on Pesach has again nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with tradition. We must remember that, because once you get into that area, you must console yourself with the contradictions we just mentioned. Therefore, I stress again that the clues concerning this aspect of Passover deals with certainty. What is bondage? Bondage means that you're not free. You're never free if you're not sure what tomorrow will bring. So you're always living in fear of what tomorrow may be. And I'm not speaking only of physical material needs, walking across the street, flying somewhere. I mean, there can be any number of uncertainties that if one wants to worry, he's got enough to worry, especially in this day and age. So there's no lack of subjects to create this uncertainty within us. Therefore, the aspect of Passover deals on how we can remove, meaning me personally, how I can remove this uncertainty. How can I be sure that the rest of the year will be certain for me, that I don't have to put up bars, I can leave the doors open every night? Because in essence, do you think criminals are really so thorough and they say this house because they've made a thorough investigation and found this is the most logical house to rob? Usually it doesn't work that way. There could be 4 houses on the same street. They all look alike, and they choose one house. From a Kabbalistic point of view, we know that there is another force that is driving him to one particular house and not another, because there is a security shield that exists for whatever reason. So what we are concerned with on Pesach is to create certainty. Now, we have also learned over the periods of these discussions on Kabbalah that what creates uncertainty, what creates that feeling of not being sure, according to the Kabbalah, and I'm being brief again, just to remind you that this is what you would be thinking about, and that is the essence of a desire to receive for oneself alone is the underlying cause for uncertainty. Why? Because on another realm, the certainty realm, everything is sure and everything is good. There is another reality, that reality which says everything is perfect. Even scientists are looking for a grand unification theory, meaning everything is so beautiful. But it doesn't appear to be so on our level. That is because the person is not connected to that realm that says, I will protect you. It's almost like the Lord coming down and saying, don't worry each day, I am here. Meaning, what does it mean, I am here? It doesn't mean God. It means the force of a security shield that will envelop you throughout the year. This is what we want to connect with on Passover. What they have provided us with is the Haggadah, which is the software, you might say, to connect to the hardware. The hardware contains the all-embracing reality. Everything is great. If you live in that reality, you have freedom. Because what is in essence freedom? Freedom from fear, freedom from need, freedom from want. That's freedom. If you do not have any or all of these components, then you are a slave to something. You are not free. So what is Passover? Nothing to deal with the Jew leaving Egypt. But because, as we know, the Jew was involved in the 48 gates of Tumah, we're told. What does that mean? It means that he had descended to the level of where the desire to receive was so intense, and that's why he could be involved with gold and silver. I mean, he could be involved in the material sense, not even to think that maybe he should leave immediately, because he was assured that whether he left at night or whether he left in the morning, if he would make the proper connection, he was free. Freedom does not mean running away from something. That does not create freedom. People run away from reality, they say. You know, they got a problem, you run away from it. Does that mean the problem has disappeared? No. There's an illusion that temporarily I'm not confronting the problem. The reason the Jew did not have to leave at night is because what happened that night, that we shall shortly discuss, he already had this security shield built around him. He was already protected. He had connected with the world of reality, of certainty. He knew tomorrow the Egyptian couldn't touch him. But naturally the Jew has a short memory, and he forgot that he had already acquired a security shield for 1 year. But he wasn't sure, so the next day he forgot. But that night when he made his connections, which is what the Haggadah is all about, it's our software, to make the connection to create a security shield around us. Nothing more and nothing less. Again, I stress, this is not religion, it's not tradition. The aspect of sitting around with a family, again, does not necessarily invoke the precept of this is what Passover is about. It only means that we have been provided with a system by which we can assure the next coming year a sense of security, if you make the proper connection. Because security exists. There are some people who never have to go through traumas that others go through, and therefore, this night, with the Haggadah, with the matzah, with the wine, as we shall understand, are all components by which we can make the connection to certainty. What is the matzah? Matzah and chametz. You have these two opposites, right? On chametz, on Passover, you're not permitted to eat chametz. The answer is, again, the word permitted or not permitted does not belong in the lexicon of Kabbalah. It's telling you that if you want freedom, and if you want to connect to the world of reality revolves around one concept, the concept of sharing. It does not and is not connected with the desire to receive for oneself alone. That is the illusionary realm. That illusionary realm of the desire to receive for oneself alone creates fear, needs, wants, whereas one is connected to the world of reality and sharing, he has everything. He has everything. All he has to do is make that connection, and he has freedom from every fear and every need. This is what we're told, because chametz meaning the rising, is indicative of desire to receive, negativity, action. Everyone wants a motionless state. Those who cannot achieve a motionless state are the ones always seeking and running from place to place, thinking that is where they shall achieve that tranquility, that peace. Whereas if they understood that wherever they are and wherever they shall be, that is the place where tranquility can be theirs. In fact, it's the only way. You can't find it outside yourself. It's got to be right within yourself. So the reason we are told not to eat chametz and eat matzah, if you will notice the three letters of chametz is chet, mem, tzadik. Matzah is also mem, tzadik, and the hay. The only difference between chametz and matzah is the chet being pierced a little. If you pierce the chet, then what do you have? You have a hay. When you pierce the chet, you have a hay. What does that mean? That's the clue. That's the clue. That when you pierce the desire to receive for oneself alone, which is chametz, you then have matzah. So the purpose of making matzah the way we make matzah is for what purpose? To keep the desire to receive activity, physical activity, from expanding. What is the desire to receive? What is the electron in an atom? Always in motion, never stops. Always looking, always seeking to connect with the proton or the neutron. He never stops for a minute, or she never stops for a minute. It never stops for a minute. Why? Because the internal energy intelligence of the electron is one of negativity. Negativity means it is unfulfilled. Therefore, it wants. And so you have this constant rotation. Matzah, we want, is the product of restricting the growth of this thing called matzah. In fact, the word is not even matzah. It says they made ugot. Ugot. Doesn't say they made matzah. Ugot. So if you want to know why some people consider matzahs to be round, right? Because uga really means circle. Uga means circle. In any event, the matzah, and the reason for eating the matzah is not because we're supposed to eat matzah, because they had no time for it to rise. They had at least 9 hours for that bread to rise. There was no problem. They did not leave in the evening. Remember that. They did not leave in the evening, so they were not in a rush. Then what is the interpretation which appears to indicate they were in a rush? They were not in a rush. So the word about litmamea it means something else, obviously, because they didn't leave until the morning. This matzah that we speak about, seems to be the reason for the seder. It seems to be the reason and the channel by which we shall make proper connections. Nothing more. Remember, we want to connect with Netzach. We want to connect with this cosmic energy force called victory. This is what we're going to be doing that night. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like dialing a telephone. You can go through the entire Haggadah, and if you don't know what you want, what do you want from it? If you say you want tradition, that's what they're going to give you, tradition. If you say you want perform a precept, they'll give you performing a precept. That's all you'll get. So from the very outset, you must know, what do I want from this whole thing? And so when you begin to sit down at the seder, this has got to be your objective. I want to connect with certainty. It's for me. It's for me. I want to be like the Jew, that when it came 12 o'clock and he did what he had to do at 12 o'clock, he didn't have to run anymore. he found freedom where he was. He didn't have to run. Why did he go out? Why did he go out? Because, for whatever reason, he was told that there's a place where he can even fill himself with even more and greater senses of fulfillment, and that was the energy center in Jerusalem. Well, satisfied in Egypt. He had achieved freedom by doing whatever he did, which is the Haggadah, which has been stretched to a greater extent than what they did that night. But the reason they left was not because they were not free. They were free at 12 o'clock, and therefore they took their time and left the next day and left for Israel, because they were told in Israel, you have the energy center located in Jerusalem, and of course, if that meant even more beautiful things to come, why not? All right? So that is essentially what we want to accomplish on this night of Pesach. I don't know what kind of Haggadah you're using. And let me say, for those who can't read Hebrew, and therefore may be using only an English Haggadah, and not even observing that which is written, is losing contact with the software. Because I've stressed this many a time on tapes, that even if you can't read Hebrew, even if you don't know what the Hebrew means, but you should scan the Hebrew. Even if you can't read it, you should scan the Hebrew, because the Hebrew in a proper Haggadah. Now, unfortunately, like the word is out, 99% of all mezuzot and tefillin are not kosher. Don't have the power. They're pasul. Pasul. You imagine all these years? In fact, to the extent now they want to pass a law that the Hebrew bookstore fellow who sells you a mezuzah and it's not proper, that he should be brought up on charges of selling fraud. First time, imagine we need the local governments to enact something which I don't understand in the first place. I mean, why does anyone want a mezuzah if he doesn't know the purpose of it? The same thing here. There are most Haggadot that I have seen do not, in Hebrew, create for us the purpose. And I'm referring to the L'Shem Yichud Kutsha B'Richu Ushkentei, to connect the Yud K with the Vav K. What is the Yud K with the Vav K? That's a tetragrammaton. The tetragrammaton, as I assume you all are familiar with, is the most powerful channel that the Jew can make use of. The Yud K Vav K is the most powerful channel by which we can make connections. And therefore, in a proper Haggadah, I say proper meaning it at least tells you what the objective is all about, we want to create a link and a connection between the Yud K, which is the upper level, the level of reality, and the Vav K of the Tetragrammaton. The last two letters are the creation of Shemayim Va'aretz, the first verse in Genesis. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. That is the world of illusion. Everything we see in the physical way, which is illusionary according to the physicists, and certainly according to the Kabbalists, we want to connect the illusionary world. We don't want to leave the world of corporeal existence. We don't want to die. We don't want to become just souls without a body. So the alternative is, if you want to be connected to the world of reality, which is the Yud K of the Tetragrammaton, which is the entire objective of this night of Seder, you have to say, what is my intention with what I'm going to do? So, in the proper Haggadah, it will always state, L'shem yichud kutsha b'richu ishkatei al yedei ha'u tameh v'nelam b'shem kol yisrael. We want to get together the world of reality with the world of illusion, so that we can live in both worlds and experience both worlds. That means you can have the physical corporeal reality. At the same time, you will not have to suffer the uncertainty that exists in the world of corporeal reality. Now, the physicist says, I don't say this, but nothing exists in the physical realm unless you decide it's there. This chair here that I cannot see, right? I don't see the chair. You all can see this chair? According to the physicists, you're the only ones who know that the chair exists. If I don't see the chair, it does not exist until I make an observation and I say the chair is there. But if you don't see it, even though we all know it's in the room, but if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. This is true. That is the world of illusion, the world of physical reality. Now, unfortunately, it appears as if only the Kabbalist is of that opinion. But that opinion is already an opinion which has been confirmed by all physicists. There is only one problem. They don't want us to know about that. Can you imagine? If we all were aware of the fact that they considered everything of a physical corporeal reality as illusion, we go out of our minds. I mean, who wants to consider the table is not here? We're leaning on the table. Well, only when I lean on the table and it serves a purpose is it there. If I don't make use of it and I don't see it, I'm looking up at the ceiling, it's not there. We also agree with that the physical world is world of illusion. How do we know it's in a world of illusion? Because there are very few people in the world, of the 4 billion people, that we can ask, are you free? Meaning you have no fears of tomorrow, you have no needs, you have no wants. How many people can you count that could answer, that's right, I have no needs? Is there anyone like that around? The Kabbalist says he's in that realm. Why? Because he is connected to the world of reality, and at the same time, he understands that we need, for whatever reason, we learned that in the Talmud Esses Sfirot, that we need this physical corporeality, because it's the channel by which I can achieve reality. But in any event, the Yud K, which is the realm of reality, we hope to, on this night, connect to the physical illusionary reality. This is the only purpose of this whole Seder. This was the purpose of Exodus. This was the purpose of Exodus, that the Jew would achieve a total fulfillment, meaning the world of reality where there is total fulfillment would now become manifested in the lower realm, which is called the Vav K, which is called the Zeir Anpin and Malchut of the universe. Once you understand that the entire Seder is geared and directed towards that one concept, then you understand, or you should, maybe you never asked, or maybe you don't even know, that there are 15 stages. There are 15 stages in the Haggadah. 15 that should be recited. Why 15? Without the Kabbalistic answer, I don't think there is a Jew that is really performing this thing called the Seder night that probably can give you an answer. Why 15? For all intents and purposes, it could have been 14, it could have been 19. Why 15? Now you know why it's 15. Because we need 15 stages by which to connect to the Yud K. Yud is 10, the K is 5, and so to connect to the reality world, we need 15 stages. It's that simple. But you have to know that, because knowing is the connection. If you don't know, says the Zohar, if you don't know, you have not made connections, because that is what is stated in chapter 4 and verse 1 of Genesis. Adam knew Eve and she became pregnant. From knowing she became pregnant, from that the Zohar learns that knowing is connection. The knowing is the connection. Without knowing, you have not made any connection. Therefore, we have 15 stages. Now, during the Seder night, you're supposed to prepare a Seder plate, right? A Seder plate. See if we have a picture of it here. We can throw it on the scene. Brought this one because I was hoping it would be here.
it's also on the 15th day.
Oh, here. Well, it's not a plate. What's that?
It's also on the 15th day.
Right. Okay. That's another good observation. Why it's the 15th day already? Because it's full. The moon is full. What does it mean? It's full. We've just gotten through a preliminary or preface to the introduction of the Seder. We want to achieve what? Reality. We want to get to the world of reality, because in the world of reality there is total fulfillment. On the 15th day is the only time of the month that the moon is full. The moon is indicative of ourselves, of this world called the world of the physical reality. And that also had to be on the 15th day, because it is the only day that there is total fulfillment. Why the 15th day? Because that means the Yud-Kei, the realm of reality, has now become manifested in the world of illusion, in our world. On a cosmic level, totality of fulfillment now exists. All you have to do is learn how to make that connection. Again, if you ask me, what happens? Someone says, who needs reality? Who needs fulfillment? I'm happy the way things are. Then I can suggest to you, you don't have to perform any of this. For two reasons. Number one, there is no such thing as an obligation. For what? You think God needs your seder? I wouldn't think that would be the reason we would have to perform it. Would you say you're doing this because of a tradition? Because of a tradition? That what? That maybe it had some connection with the freedom, but if you don't even know what it's accomplishing for you, if you don't know what the purpose is, then in the final analysis, you have not even accomplished what was once a tradition. Sorry, it's not that clear, but in any event, there are different ways of establishing the ke'ara. That's the seder plate, which seems to play a very dominant role in the Haggadah. The ke'ara. Again, tradition stipulates on the top. You'll see here on the side, on the right side, which we'll go through, is the zeroah, which means a shank bone. Okay? And we go over to the left on the top, we have beitzah, the egg. And then we go down and we have the maror, right? The bitter herb. Then we go down again to the right and we have charosit. And you notice there that in this particular Haggadah, which is the Haggadah you should have, because we're going to learn soon that we're not just merely performing a tradition here. And then we go over to the left side, which is karpas, that's the parsley. And then finally the chazeret, which actually is Roman lettuce. It is not bitter herbs, it's Roman lettuce. Chazeret. Now, what does all this signify, and why do we need the ke'ara? And beneath this ke'ara, we will have our three matzot. The three matzot. Because from a Kabbalistic point of view, this is your software. If this is your software, and if you know anything about computers, let me see the one who doesn't know anything about the keyboard. You think he can access into the hard disk? You think he can access into information? If he doesn't know how to operate the keys, what does he accomplish? It's the same thing here. By the establishment of these things, if you merely put them on the plates, you've accomplished zero. Accomplished zero. Because the Ari says very clearly, when we are discussing again the zeroah, the shank bone, we are discussing the sphira, the energy intelligence, which is referred to as chesed. Chesed. And when you place the shank bone, we'll understand why it is chesed. When you place this shank bone, the zeroah, on that plate, you have to designate it as an energy intelligence of chesed. Now, another observation which you should have made already was the Magen David, right? Here you have the Magen David. We know it's called the Magen David. It's not called the Star of David. It's not something you put on an Israeli flag, or it's not something you put on a Bet HaKnesset saying, oh, this is Jewish, right? Does it have more significance for most Jews than this is Jewish? No. But we know from a Kabbalistic point of view, this is the Magen David. This is our shield. We want to, as I said before, create a security shield. The security shield is Magen David. That's why it's called Magen David. It is the shield. Why David? Because David is the Sfirah of Malchut, and that's why it's called Magen David. We are Malchut. Humankind, all humankind. This entire physical, corporeal universe is called Malchut. It's the protection. This little combination here, which seems to be something so irrelevant to what we're doing, is the software. Without designating the Zroah as an energy intelligence of Chesed, and you've just placed these things without initiating its energy intelligence, meaning without the power of the mind over this physical corporeal matter, you might believe that you have no power. There is no such thing as power of the mind over matter. And again, no reason to go through the motions. The motions accomplish zero. Maybe that's what's been happening for 2,000 years. They've been going through the motions, just putting Zroah down or whatever. No. What is the Zroah? What is the Zroah? The Zroah is a portrayal of the slaying of the lamb. Now, you know what Aries means. If you don't know what Aries means, I hope we don't have amongst us Aries today. They may misunderstand the connotation, but there is always plus and minus to every sign. But what is Aries? What is Aries? Aries is the epitome of the desire to receive for oneself alone. That's the internal energy intelligence of Aries. Desire to receive for oneself alone. They are also very sharing people. However, with a ledger count. Always with a ledger. In other words, I've done so much for you. They then turn around and say, well, what do you owe me? What do you owe me? That's Aries. There's never a total sharing. It's always with a concentration of how much have I done? How much have I done for someone? Right? What is Aries? Aries was the god of the Egyptians. What do you mean it was the god of the Egyptians? We are talking about people who created mummification, which since the destruction of that middle kingdom, there has never again existed that knowledge of mummification. Creation of pyramids. I mean, there have been the Migdal Bavel. We don't know what they want to do because there's no recollection. They created pyramids. You think for a moment that they took a lamb and said, this is our God. Sound logical? Absolutely not. You're talking about a very highly civilized, sophisticated, advanced nation. So what do you mean they took the lamb as their God? Because they knew that the lamb contains, of all animals in the world, of all things in the world, the lamb contained, like a nuclear reactor, contains a certain aspect of power, of energy. The lamb contained the epitome of the desire to receive for oneself alone, that negative energy. There was no one single entity in this world that contained as much concentrated energy of the desire to receive for oneself alone as the lamb. So what does it mean it was their God? They knew how to connect and tap that energy. Therefore, they can go through with mummification. They knew how to preserve a body because they had this power called desire to receive for oneself alone, which the body consists of. This was their power. That's the way they enslaved the whole world, with the desire to receive for oneself alone. They encouraged everyone. They were also influential in dominating people with the idea that there was no other force in the world but the desire to receive for oneself alone. That was the Jew, and that's why he was under the clutches of the Egyptians. But what happened? there was a little insignificant mitzvah in the Torah about on the 10th day they were to take the lamb, and on the 14th day in the evening they were going to slaughter the lamb. A story of taking the lamb, and this would be the food they were going to have that evening. And how were they supposed to prepare it? Very strict details. Got to be burnt, can't be cooked. What's wrong with cooking it? Why must it be burnt? Because the Jews were not deserving of what happened that night. In spite of the fact that there was a cosmic event of a sudden surge of light, what we call Or de Chachma, which broke the bond of the Egyptian over the world. But before that, they burnt this offering. They burnt this lamb. Why did they burn it? Because we know that burning creates, let's say, on a piece of paper. You burn a piece of paper, it becomes ash. There is no continuity. No continuity with fire. You cook something, it does not lose its essence. Burning something, as I said, if it becomes ash, then you have essentially destroyed the essence of that thing. That is fire. Therefore, they were told to burn it, but not burn it. It should not be raw. Burn it to the extent that the power of desire to receive for oneself alone would be transformed. Would be transformed into what? An aspect of sharing. They were in essence taking this awesome power of lamb and transforming it from a desire to receive for oneself alone to one of sharing. Therefore, if you notice, it's on the right side, representing chesed, which is sharing. So while Aries is essentially a sign of the constellation of desire to receive for oneself alone, this is the one opportunity, not only for Aries, but for all mankind, on this particular month, on this month of Aries, and that's why it had to happen. The Exodus can only happen in the month of Aries, when the desire to receive for oneself alone stands for the world of illusion, and transform it and connect it to the world of reality. Therefore, when we take the shank bone or anything that has been burnt, a piece of meat that has been burnt, and we place that on the Seder table, which represents the Sfirat Chesed, sharing of the Magen David. This is all that I've just said, is what you must concentrate. If you believe that there is such a thing as power of the mind, and hopefully it's coming through more and more, if doctors are beginning to realize that 90% of an individual's recovery depends on his attitude, a new revelation. In other words, the mind has something to do with our well-being. The Kabbalists knew that from the beginning. In fact, it's only the illusion that computers are better than people, that everything is better than our minds. Are we free? Like I said in the morning, who's free? Designer clothes, that's what you wear. What kind of a car is what strata you're in. Where you live, who tells you? You live where you want? How do you go dressed? It's all part of that framework that they put you into. Can you act differently? No, most people can't act differently. To break out from that, to feel free is what Zohar is doing. We're transforming that feeling of bondage, which means the lack of freedom, is done by this burning. So it portrays the Sfirat of Chesed. We must have the Magen David. We must have all of these energy intelligences put together, because that will become our software. That's that floppy disk. That's your program. Without this program, and without understanding the program, because are you putting this into a hard disk? Are we operating with computers this night? No. Nobody even knows where the hard disk is, right? It's in the cosmos. How do you connect with the cosmos? Magen David. There is no other avenue or path that one can take to connect with the cosmos, with that world of reality. So therefore, we put the Zohar. Now, if you noticed, as I said before, on the left side, we put a hard-boiled egg, and there are thousands of different interpretations of what that represents. But we know that Beitzah, which means egg in Hebrew, in Aramaic stands for the word is be'ah. Be'ah. Even in Arabic, it's be'ah. Not Beitzah, be'ah. Now, be'ah in Aramaic means desire. You want to know why the hard egg is put on that side? Because it represents part of the Magen David, which is gevurah, which is negativity. Remember, negativity is not bad. Negativity buying within itself is not bad. If it's combined like the atom, the force of the atom, is it destructive? No. But if it operates as one unified whole, then it's good. If it does not operate as one unified whole, then you have a split atom. The only thing that comes out of split atoms is destruction.
What is the significance of mevushalet? Why does it have to be cooked versus not cooked? It said mevushalet.
Right. To show you that this negativity, the more you try to weaken it by burning it and so on, the harder it gets. There is no other substance in the world that undergoes heat or fire that it becomes into a solid rather than become like liquid. Metal becomes a liquid if there's enough heat connected with it. All right? And then the third aspect is maror. Now we'll have a short break. We'll have a short break and we'll continue on with